It's the Daily Dog.
Hi everybody, welcome back. It is the Daily Doug, and today it is current events edition because America, holy crap, what is going on? Today is September 9th, 2020. We are 6 months into this pandemic and almost 4 years, 3.5 years into this crazy, volatile, and just wacky, corrupt-filled Trump presidency. And as is the case in 2020, and really every day for the last 4 years, every day reveals a new low, unfathomable new low for this president and this party and these voters that continue to support the carnage in our country and our society that's going on. Bob Woodward, venerated journalist Bob Woodward, has written a book. It is called Rage, and it comes out on September 15th. There are snippets from the book that are coming out today, including a couple of audio clips of Trump talking in his own words. And what is revealed in the tapes today that is making the rounds on the national media and international media is that Trump knew. He knew about the severity of the coronavirus. He knew about how transmissible it was and how detrimental it was going to be to society. He knew. I'm reading from CNN. In a conversation with Woodward on February 7th, Trump said, "This is deadly stuff." And even further on March 19th. On March 19th, he's saying this. On March 19th. Remember March 19th? That's the middle of March. It's spring break for most colleges, right? And by that time, the pandemic was raging out of control. In New York especially, but all along the East Coast. I live in New Jersey. It was a scary, scary time. Still is. Right? And so right in the midst of all this happening, the President of the United States is having a conversation on the record with a book journalist. And he's saying, I always wanted to play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. He lied. He chose to lie to the American people, knowing that it was going to be detrimental and that it was going to cause deaths and it was going to have this mass problem. He thought that it was going to negatively impact his image if it looked like he couldn't handle it. So he just decided to act like he was, just like he's done his entire life, to lie, to just assume the superiority without any accountability or any reasoning for his actions other than just that he thinks that he's untouchable. And just a narcissist and just downright evil, y'all. Evil. How is this guy our public servant, our lead public servant, when he has no idea what public service means? I mean, earlier this week it was the realizations that all the stuff that he's been saying about the military and people that work in our military and that sacrifice and volunteer to give of themselves for this country and for a higher cause are suckers and losers because he doesn't understand a non-transactional action that a human can take. Just boggles my mind. You know, my mind goes to, I mean, how many lives that could have been saved, jobs that could have been saved, people's sanity that could have been saved if he would have come out and said, "Hey, everybody, you may or may not like me, but there's something that I can't control that's coming down the pike, and we've got to make sure that we're doing our best. So we're all going to mask, and we're all going to test, and we're all going to work together, and this is our moment to come together and unify." He could have done that. And it wouldn't have been hard. It wouldn't have been hard. That's why it's so hard to think that he cares about everybody equally, because his actions are just opposite of that. He's acting to do in his mind what is beneficial for himself. And everything else, it's the chips fall where they fall. Reading some of his family members writing about him, apparently to his family, too. So, of course, my mind goes to, of course, this will be the one thing that makes all of the Trump supporters finally see the light and choose not to continue to endorse him or his party with their vote. And in a rational world, that would be true. But I'm sad to say that we're not living in a rational world. We're living in an irrational world. It is my understanding of the situation, from my point of view, as someone who grew up in a white, middle-class, suburban family. We always had enough. Sometimes we were very close on that, but we always had enough. Right? I got the opportunity to go to college, so did my brother. We live above average lives. I'll never understand the reality that my Republican brothers and sisters, my Republican voting brothers and sisters believe in. I don't understand their reality. From my perspective, they're separated from reality, and it doesn't make any sense to me why they continue to support this person, especially the people that claim to be people of faith. From Michael Cohen's own book that is also coming out, he'll tell you, Trump is not a Christian. He's never been a Christian. You think Trump gets on his hands and knees and prays? You think he has any understanding of humility? There's no way, if you're like, well, I'm a Christian, so I'm voting for Trump because he's a Christian. No, he's not. And on the abortion issue, you think he's pro-life? There's no way he's pro-life. He's pro-choice. He's been pro-choice his entire life. Actually, he's been pro-Trump his entire life. And everybody else is a choice that is secondary. Right? That's probably his ism. But it just boggles my mind. Who are these people that continue to vote for him? I was looking at an article on vox.com, and it was giving some of the ranges in approval ratings for first-term presidents. And for like the last 40 years. Like George H.W. Bush, his lowest approval rating was 29%. His highest was 89%. That means 60% of the American public at some point during those 4 years changed their mind, or at least they told a pollster that they changed their mind on the job that George H.W. Bush, the Poppy Bush, was doing. More than half of the electorate publicly changing their mind. Right? During his presidency, Bill Clinton's lowest approval rating was 37%. His highest was 59%. That's 22%. It's not as much as HW, but it's quite a lot. George W. Bush, he spiked really high with a 90% approval rating right after, or in the aftermath of 9/11, when the country really did come together. But his lowest was 47%. That's 43% difference during his presidency. Obama's difference, his low was 40, his high was 67, 27% difference. Trump's lowest is 35%. Lowest approval rating is 35%, but his highest is only 49%. This is a guy that's never been above 50% approval rating as a president. Shocking. I mean, it's just unprecedented. And it's only 14% of range. So how is this guy's approval rating so consistent when his presidency has been so fundamentally volatile? ups and downs in the stock market, with the pandemic, with the social unrest, the overseas wars, with Brexit, with North Korea, with Russia and crime, all this stuff, right? This volatile presidency, and yet right down the middle. In this article, this Vox article, they're talking about the stability of Trump's poll numbers, his support. And in this, they say, before the pandemic started, this time last year, before he was impeached, before the pandemic, before all of these books started coming out, before the ramp up to the election really was in play, Vox says his approval rating was at 40%, around 40%. And now, after all that stuff happened, his approval rating is still about 40%. And it's just, how is that possible? How is it possible? How is it that all of those people, those 40% of people that were supportive of him last year, how is it that none of them have said, yeah, that's too much for me, I'm going to switch parties? Especially with a guy like Joe Biden, right? The least controversial, the Democratic responded to the most controversial and corrupt president in the history of the country by picking Uncle Joe, right? And the nicest, candidate you'll ever find. How is that possible? And I have an answer. It's a controversial one, but I think it bears saying because it's important, because of the times that we're in. There are less people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, registered people in either party today, than there have been in the last half century. The party numbers are down. There's a lot more independent voters. Now, under any circumstance, the fact that the parties have low enrollment, basically, and there's a huge amount, 40%, I think, or more, of people in this country, voting people are registered independents. That is a very diverse group, right? So you would think everything's up in the air for these elections, but the elections have been extremely stable, and the support for one party or the one major party or the other major party has been very, very consistent. And there's a reason for that. The 40% approval rating that Trump has hovered at for practically his entire presidency is almost the exact same percentage of Americans that think abortion is murder. Now, I know that I'm not going to sway anybody on this issue, right? I'm not going to try. Because whether you're right or wrong, or rather if there is a right or if there is a wrong, that's not my point. My point is the Republican Party has been allowed to maintain its status as a national party, ruling really in the minority, but maintaining an immense amount of weight with their ability to pick Supreme Court justices and stack the Supreme Court, and with gerrymandering and the whole nine. But the reason they've been able to have that support is because people have become one-issue voters. And these people, mostly, Christian people that have been convinced that they have to vote for the Republican Party because that's the party that's pro-life. I personally don't understand that decision, but that's not my point. My point is all the people that have done that and still continue to do that are the reason why we haven't been able to kick these extremists in this Republican Party, which in my mind, the entire party's extremist now. It's why they still have power. It's because they know they can do the most corrupt things, but if they sell you a line that you can half believe so that you can make it fit your narrative and match your faith somehow, it's why, like, the support of the support of people that are voting on the abortion issue, their support has tipped the scales at the local level, state level, and national level for the last generation. And it's allowed the Republican Party to get more and more and more corrupt and more extreme because they know they can take advantage of them. They know that at the end of the day, they won't switch and they won't change their mind. And it's laid out. It's laid out in the data. It's laid out in the data. All this stuff that Trump has done, these folks will not change their mind because, I'm sad to say, it's as if they can't. Because if they change their mind, it means they're going against their faith. And if they're going against their faith, then they're denying God. And if they're denying God, that means they don't get into heaven. It's a mind fuck. And I'm saddened that it's come to this. My ask is, if you have people in your family, people in your orbit, I do, that believe this way. The timing is now for us to have this conversation. I don't know why the Democrats aren't pushing this more, because this is the only way that I think they're going to get people to move. They have to convince people that the Democratic Party are not just a bunch of corrupt baby killers. You know, if I was taught from a very early age that Democrats want to kill babies, and that means they're horrible people and they can't possibly be Christians, so they don't stand for us, and that means anything that they stand for, anything that they say must be wrong or come from a place of corruption, right? And then live with that for 30 years. This is where you know, the rationale of the modern Republican Party is. And that's why it feels completely separated from reality to me, because they've created their own 30 years ago and nobody questioned it. Because we were too nice. Because of religious freedom. Well, that religious freedom has been taken advantage of by politicians that have divided this country, that have been able to deny climate change, because it'll make them and their friends lose money. That this is the reason we don't have universal health care. This is the reason that we don't have better gun control. All that. The end result is increased cruelty and increased injustice. And I'm tired of it. My ask is, have the conversation with your friends. Tell them, you know, I'm not gonna win the battle on whether abortion is murder or whether it's not. That's a different conversation. Some other time. I have trouble with keeping my calm in this situation. But if we're going to convince our friends that at this point it's America or fascism, and Joe Biden is a good Christian man, and Kamala is a good woman and a good Christian woman, and they're good family people, and they're good dedicated public servants, and we need their vote. We need their vote. It's time. Trump knew. He knew about the coronavirus. He knew. And he cared more about himself than everybody else in the world. and he's asking for you to vote for him for re-election? No way. Just no. I hope I'm long-winded. I'm sorry. But I hope that you'll share this with your friends, or at least take it and have the courage to have the conversations. It's going to be one-on-one, and it's going to have to be in a safe space. We have to let these people know that if they vote for a Democrat, it doesn't mean they're voting against God. It doesn't mean they're throwing away their faith. What they've been taught about Democrats has been the result of propaganda, and it's just not true. We need to reintroduce ourselves as where moral people and people who believe in justice need to be. And if they're one of those people, then they can be on board, and we'll welcome them with open arms. They can't continue to vote for this guy and this party. Otherwise, I weep for the future of this country. I weep for the future of humanity, y'all. If we can't get this 20% of Americans that are making their votes cast primarily on that and justifying everything else because this has to be true, then if they can't be swayed, then we're going to have to wait for them all to die out and hope that humanity isn't ruined and that the world isn't inhabitable by the time that they all do. It's a sobering conversation. Thank you for listening, if you're listening this far, and we'll see you next time. And we'll keep plugging away, and we'll keep doing our best, and trying to be as good a citizen and as good a human as we can. Be kind to those around you. Be empathetic. Everybody's going through it. It's hard, but try to exercise patience. But my patience is wearing out, y'all. Less than 60 days until the election. Let's get it. This has been today's Daily Doug.